Welcome once again at the TIE Sustainability Summit 2021. I'm your host, Hardik Vaidya. And as a good host should, I'd like to begin by thanking you all for joining us at the second segment of day two. Now, we've had a phenomenal first segment earlier in the day. An eminent lineup of speakers, panelists, moderators, and a very special address by Sadhguruji. This segment is going to be an equal blockbuster nonetheless. We'll kick off this first session with a power panel discussion lined up right here for you. The topic is aptly titled From Sustainability to Social Impact Leadership Conversations. And for this, please join me in warmly welcoming the astute leaders. Our first panelist, Ms. Deepali Khanna, Managing Director, Asia Regional Office at the Rockefeller Foundation. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Joined by Mr. Srini Nagarajan, Head of South Asia CDC. Welcome, sir. And Mr. Ramraj, Chief Executive Officer at Impact Investors Council, will don the hat of a moderator for this panel. Thank you all once again for joining us. Over to you, Mr. Pai.
Thank you, Hardik. I don't know how many people have told you that you look a bit like Hardik Pandya, and I don't know whether that's but that's the first thing that I thought about when I kind of saw you. So thank you for that introduction, and very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, depending on which part of the world you're from. Welcome to this interesting and unique conversation titled From Sustainability to Social Impact, Leadership Conversations. I am Ramraj. I head up the India Impact Investors Council. We are a not-for-profit industry body which is focused on bringing more capital to the Indian impact space. We work with regulators and investors in creating partnerships and really explore every way possible to create a more facilitative environment for impact investing in India. It is indeed my privilege today to introduce to you two of the leading lights of the Indian impact space, if I may say that. We have Srini Nagarajan, Managing Director and Head of Asia for CDC PLC, and Deepali Khanna, Managing Director and Head of Asia for Rockefeller Foundation. I'm sure many of you are familiar with both Srini and CDC as well as Deepali and Rockefeller Foundation. But for the benefit of those who may not, here is a brief intro. CDC is UK's development finance institution and helps solve some of the biggest global development challenges by investing patient, flexible capital to support private sector growth and innovation. I would want to say that it is the world's first impact investor, one of India's largest impact investors, 70 years of experience, both in Africa and South Asia, 1,200 businesses it has invested in, cumulative portfolio of about $5 billion plus pounds. 30% of those assets are based in India. Srini has been with CDC for a long time. He joined CDC in 2013 to re-lead the Asia team under the new investment strategy of CDC. Under his leadership, I must say that the team has made successful investments in a variety of areas, including financial services, healthcare, renewable energy, including the creation of CDC subsidiary, Ayana Renewable Power, which is an investor in clean power focused on South Asia. Also, for some of you who follow this space, we've seen CDC take a much more overt position in debt investments as well as innovative blended finance structures like pooled bond issuances and so on. That's a quick introduction to Srini and CDC. Moving on, the Rockefeller Foundation, as many of you are aware, is amongst the most respected and deep-rooted of American philanthropies. Rockefeller Foundation seeks to advance its goals in a model which, I must say is quite interesting and, exciting, which is really through leveraging better science and data and through collaboration with partners and grantees. By identifying and accelerating breakthrough solutions, the foundation serves as a crucial catalyst, convener, and innovator, which helps the private sector and government do more. I mean, the foundation has invested upwards of $17 billion in today's dollar terms to help and support thousands of organizations. It has a long and distinguished history of working in India, and major areas of focus are clean energy, health, climate change solutions, and so on. Deepali is the Managing Director of the Asia Region Office. She manages the foundation's policy, advocacy, grant making, and partnerships. She also leads the Rockefeller Foundation initiatives to convene and catalyze strategic collaborations that advance development in Asia. So that's a quick sense, and I'm sure most of you would have got a good flavor of both the organizations as well as the people representing them. I'm seeing this as a very, very interesting conversation for a variety of reasons. The major thing is we have two people and two organizations, which have, if I may say, broadly the similar goals, but could be looking at slightly different, models and approaches, towards reaching them. Srini and CDC typically invest in private sector companies with a very specific focus on generating both social impact and creating financial returns. Rockefeller indeed has its own impact investing portfolio. In fact, the whole term impact investing itself came from one of the conversations that Rockefeller had several years back. But at the same time, from what we see, Rockefeller also has a slightly more infrastructure-based systems approach to creating an enabling sort of environment where sustainability, jobs, and variety of other activities can flower. So indeed, these are two very different kind of approaches, and we are hoping, therefore, by able to get views and inputs from both organizations and both people, we will be giving you, or we will be hopefully giving all of you in the audience a much more holistic view of the different ways in which one can look at sustainability and social impact. So that's kind of pretty much the lay of the land in terms of what I want to do. I'm going to structure my questions around three broad headings. First of all, we'd like to hear from both of them in terms of how they look at the importance of sustainability. What does sustainability mean to them? Secondly, we want to focus on how do we go beyond sustainability? How can we move beyond sustainability towards social impact? Are there different ways of doing this? And thirdly, I just want to focus on 3 or 4 key initiatives, which I believe are very integral to any conversation on sustainability, mainly climate, gender, and catalytic finance. And I think both of these organizations have specific initiatives and agendas in these areas. I mean, and we'd like to keep this interactive. So if at all it's possible, any of you want to have questions, please do raise these questions, and we'll be kind of happy to take these questions as we kind of move along. With that kind of broad introduction, let me quickly get into the first question, which I had both to Srini as well as Deepali. If you really look at it today, even today, I think many people look at sustainability and business as binary. What does sustainability mean for you, and how does sustainability and business integrate for each of you? And maybe we can just start off by both of you sharing your worldview of how you look at this entire term of sustainability, which is catching so much of attention today world over.
Deepali, you should go first, ladies.
Thank you, Srini and Ramraj. I want to really thank Ramraj, you, and of course the TIE organizers for inviting me to this platform. It's really a pleasure to be here with Srini. We have been part of TIE's journey and have supported social entrepreneurs for microenterprise enterprise development through TIE. So it is really great to be joining the Sustainability Summit. I think that the supposed boundary of sustainability and business is an important question in our current context. But to really provide a reality check in a world constantly plagued by the threat of environmental crisis, and for one that is in the midst of a pandemic, it is crucial that businesses adopt a sustainable approach, whether that is in terms of ethically sourcing inputs or committing to reducing emissions. For us here at the Rockefeller Foundation, sustainability means transitioning from the current state of fragility and inequality to one of resilience and equal opportunity. Sustainability means building a system that creates opportunities for economic and social mobility while also keeping in mind the environment. To achieve the desired goals of sustainability, we need bold leadership within government, philanthropic, and other non-governmental organizations and businesses, and most importantly, throughout society. As for the integration of business and sustainability, I think it is safe to say that sustainability concerns are no longer optional and are rather essential if economies are to move into a future that essentially hinges on them. I believe it is important to generate positive social impact for business beyond financial gains. And some of you may know that it was, in fact, at one of our conferences in 2007, in Bellagio, where the term impact investment was coined to refer to an industry whose purpose is to enable investment of capital with precisely this in mind. Today, several industries have demonstrated how sustainability models can be integrated more seamlessly with businesses, and in fact, can even improve them. So it is my hope that we are able to aid more businesses to adopt this view for the sake of their own longevity and that of the greater good, which is absolutely critical. So over to you, Srini.
Thank you, Deepali. That was a wonderful introduction. I don't think they need anything more from me, actually. Thank you for the opportunity, Ramraj, and in Impact Investor Council, which is very, very dear to our heart. And fundamentally, I think CDC, as Ramraj introduced us, we are the world's oldest DFI. We always strike a balance between being developmental and commercial. We generally don't try and put our commercial goals ahead of our developmental goals. But commercial sustainability is very critical for making sure that there are long-term sustainable goals. As I look around the world in Asia and particularly South Asia, when I talk to a slew of first-generation entrepreneurs, it used to be a push factor earlier. Now it's more a pull. Honestly, because the concept of sustainability has really, it's really there in everyone's mind. Most first generation entrepreneurs I talk to, including the old generation entrepreneurs, I'm particularly intrigued because of the first generation entrepreneurs. Sustainability is very profound in their mind. It's very close to their heart as entrepreneurs. They want to create a social economic impact. And I think they want to create the longer term impact besides, of course, making money. So I think it's honestly today's world. It's really a push, a pull factor. Really, I'm very glad to say that in a post-COVID world, the extent of realization has really gone up. That's the first point. And the second important point is when you start thinking about sustainability. I mean, our studies have shown that the impact on the financial return can go hand in hand. Actually, to create a longer-term impact, a business must be financially sustainable, because as I said earlier. And I think there are 4 or 5 things which we think about when we talk about sustainability. Job creation is, of course, a fundamental thing of any development financial institution. And of course, part of our money going into the poorer states of any part of the world, I mean, poorer states in India, for example, is very critical for us, really. And that will continue as one of our important mission. But if you try and look at the world of climate change, as Deepali pointed out, many of us have signed up to the Paris Accord. And he talks about 3 things: just transition, which is a very important thing, the net zero by 2050, which we're all aspiring to do, and adaptation and resilience, which we can talk more about these areas. Gender, of course, as you said, Ramraj, is a very important part of what we are trying to do. So I just wanted to say that, look, sustainability is not a separate feature. We form ESG committees in various companies and try and discuss the concept of implementation of sustainability goals through a very organized mechanism. And how do we try and bring this to the mainstream of various companies? Unless you bring this to the mainstream of companies, it's going to be very hard to try and implement some of these things. So we, through our ESG committees, try and make sure that they are kind of intricately involved in the mainstream. For example, if it's a bank, it's there in the risk management policy, both the gender and the climate aspects of it, really, so that it's there in their day-to-day lives. But I'm very proud to say that the concept of sustainability is gathering a lot of momentum. A lot of people are thinking about how do we, and there is a lot of people are aspiring to know more about it, really. And at CDC, we have been practicing this for the last 30 years in Asia. And back in 2000s, when we introduced the concept of ESG, it was pretty alien. And today, everyone knows about it. And I don't think you can raise any international money without understanding the concept of ESG. Right. So I would say they really go hand in hand. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Srini and Deepali. I think some great points. I just wanted to quickly kind of touch up on one of the points that both of you raised, which is in terms of the pandemic. And as we know that, the pandemic has had serious implications for a variety of people, if I may say, in 2 dimensions, for people who have had significant job losses, significant loss of income, significant loss of business. And then there are the other people like us, if I may say, more privileged. Even for people like us, there is a lot of rethink in the way we look at life, the way we look at our work, and so on and so forth. For organizations like yours, which are very deeply engaged in the development sector, has the pandemic really created any sort of structural shifts in the way you've looked at areas like sustainability, or in terms of specific engagements where things are not just moving along, if I may say, in a somewhat linear fashion, but there have been kind of step changes in the way you've, sort of thought about something, or you've kind of evolved. So are there any specific areas where you feel that the pandemic has really changed the way you've sort of evolved or thought about this whole issue of sustainability? Maybe Deepali, you want to, yeah.
Okay, so absolutely, Ramraj, the pandemic has definitely changed things significantly. And, our vision of sustainability has long championed development causes. And with the pandemic, we've seen that there's a setback of at least 25 years of development progress. And the urgency to address these persisting areas has only become more pronounced. And I think that, we also learned how we need to be really agile. There were things earlier that we were doing, which, there's that real sense of urgency that one has seen. The foundation's vision for impact in the future is really premised on building back from COVID in a just and equitable way. We've all seen the kind of inequities COVID has exposed. Upwards of 200 million worldwide have lost their jobs to the pandemic, which has had a profound adverse impact on just about everything. COVID is expected to add between 83 and 132 million people to the world's undernourished population. Not only has the foundation been at the forefront of providing relief and emergency aid at the peak of the waves globally, but also funding research into an overhaul of the global food systems to make healthy and sustainable diets affordable and accessible to everyone. So guided by the principles of equity and justice, in the energy space that we've been working on, we are really trying to herald a just energy transition to renewable sources, specifically solar, through distributed renewable energy solutions in a way that electrification is extended to the unelectrified areas. The aim with these efforts is really to generate employment opportunities and improve the immediate social and environmental context of marginalized and energy-poor communities worldwide, which has been significantly impacted by the COVID disruptions. In fact, they face the dual challenges of climate change and post-COVID recovery, clean energy, which can support local green jobs and further climate resilience is really the need of the hour. And we are committed to doing our part to secure a green future for posterity. On the health front, we've been deeply invested in pandemic preparedness and are establishing a pandemic prevention institute to detect and mitigate future pandemic threats. The foundation has also been working to ramp up the indigenization of the RT-PCR kits in India and has taken quality healthcare to the doorstep of vulnerable communities. So with the initiatives across the foundation's focus areas that I've just touched upon, the vision is really to bring a concerted efforts on different fronts that will all add up to creating positive impact for the post-COVID world in a sustainable way. So if I had to really sum it up, we're really taking this movement to really see how we can be doing bolder things, but in a more focused and targeted way. And also, we know we can't do it alone. We really need to be collaborating with the entire ecosystem. So I think that's really what we've been really trying to demonstrate and walk the talk in all the investments that we are making.
Srini?
Thank you. I'll keep it very short. There is a positive side to it and also a negative side to it. On the negative side, the economic impact. We all know of COVID has led to severe job losses, percentage of the population pushed into poverty, and also a disparity in society, which is quite deep, which is getting deeper by the day. On the positive side, I think the degree of innovation and the digital penetration and adaptation has been commendable, really. It's been, and I think this will not retract. And a great moment for us to push for higher realizations in the hands of producers and reducing the cost of services, which otherwise under a brick and mortar system will be impossible with higher cost. I think this is the moment when we have to really push the informal segments into the more formal segments, improving the realizations and reducing the cost. I just want to spend a few minutes on the way we reacted because we are a counter-cyclical investor. And I think they were very challenging times, and we addressed the market both to our investee companies and the wider ecosystem through three buckets. One is to preserve, where we helping our partners safeguard impact and weather the crisis. Strengthen, where we help businesses respond to economic and health challenges. And rebuild, where we continue to invest, showing confidence in the various economies we invest in Asia, really. What has happened really is that as a result of the pandemic and the significant shift, we have now shifted our whole development impact thesis and the development impact score beyond jobs and geographies to a new framework, new measurement framework, which consists of three main pillars. One is the pillar of inclusive. Inclusive, I mean, who really benefits from our money? And I think there is a particular income segment we really want to focus, that is consumption levels below a certain level. Sustainability is about green economies and what are we doing towards a net zero transition and others I talked about. And productive, we are focusing on meeting the needs and raising the incomes through jobs and livelihoods of people they are most in need, really. And I think that is really, what we have done is to change our impact score and designed a new impact score around this ISP framework, is what we call, which is far more definitive in terms of defining the way. And it's just pushing the boundaries for DFIs like us not to crowd out private capital, because our job is not to crowd out private capital, we have to crowd in private capital, right? So we're pushing the boundaries, because 20 years back we introduced ESG. Now we're pushing the boundaries. Our capital is much more distinguished, and it should be used for purposes where there is a need is much more, as opposed to crowding out private capital. Let me stop there.
Great. No, I think very, very useful inputs from both of you. I just had, broadly, if I may say, one last question on this whole area of sustainability. While I hear what you're saying, Srini, about more conversations about sustainability, my experience is that there is a bunch of people who still believe that sustainability is the job of governments alone. There is another bunch of people who believe that it is a combination of maybe governments and NGOs to sort of get together and sort of solve these issues. And one of the more benevolent views today is government, NGOs, and maybe large corporates should take care of. One of the biggest and most, if I may say, active segments of investment today in the country is really around the whole area of startups, startup investments and so on and so forth. And we are seeing so many of these organizations invest so much of money into this whole space of, if I may say, consumption, or, in many other spaces. I just thought, maybe I'll get some thoughts from both of you in terms of how should we really approach this issue of sustainability, and how we really get both for-profit actors, not-for-profit actors, governments, NGOs, all of these people to come together to really make this something which is a deeply entrenched movement, which hopefully, a couple of years later, hopefully the pandemic is behind us, we don't really forget it and go back to our old profligate ways, if I may say. So maybe some lot of closing thoughts on this part before I move on to the next section.
So I guess, Srini, you've really hit the nail on the head. And, the sustainability agenda really requires collective action and synergies between various actors in the ecosystem. I can talk about our role as a philanthropy, which really has been to get the right mix of actors together to propel any given sustainability program that we are trying to pursue. So for example, in India, we set up Smart Power India, which is a not-for-profit Section 8 company. It was really established to work towards extending rural electrification through solar and specifically DRE solutions. The vision is now supported in part by Tata Power, a for-profit company that does the groundwork of actually installing these DRE systems in the target villages and areas that Smart Power India has identified for its vision. So then the common vision and action between a for-profit actor and the foundation is leading to scaling up of mini grids to 10,000 in India in the next few years, which would be quite remarkable. All of this alongside mobilizing local ecosystems of entrepreneurs by powering small businesses through clean energy. In this way, we're really extending access to reliable energy to energy-poor communities and thereby facilitating their inclusion in the modern economy. And I said, I was really pleased, Srini, when you spoke about inclusion, because I think that's really critical. And when diverse stakeholders of an ecosystem can adopt a collaborative approach to boost the sustainability agenda, they can create benefits that are greater than the sum of their parts. And I think also, Srini, the reference to, the communities and really, as a foundation, we're constantly trying to see how we can get to the marginalized communities, because I think, what COVID has also exposed is all the inequities, and, whether you're looking at gender, you're looking at any other aspect. So I'd end with that. Over to you.
Thank you, Deepali. That's very, very enriching. Ramraj, to just answer your question, the earlier point you raised about it, entrepreneurs who don't realize sustainability is a key agenda will be will not have the ability to raise international capital. I think they will be out of this equation. I think the sooner they realize it, the better off they are. I think that's what is coming to. In terms of, see, if you divide the world of investing into three, where there are wonderful foundations like Deepali is representing, you have the impact investors, you have the blue-blooded private equity funds, right? It's very important that development financial institutions provide a continuity between all three streams, and that's exactly what we do. We provide continuity between the foundations and between the impact funds so that they become commercially sustainable over a longer period of time. And that's what the whole catalytic investment is all about. Between the catalyst and the blue-blooded investing is where the growth investing in both these streams is all about crowding in capital. So there is an enormous, last point I just wanted to make here is that, look, there's an enormous common theme between tech and impact investing today. And pandemic has evolved this theme, as I said. I think there's a common theme between mainstream investors and impact investors, which was never as vivid in the past at all. I mean, I've been seeing this for quite a while, really. And the link here is the sustainability agenda.
Right.
It's really at the heart of what every investor is thinking through. And why do bulge bracket funds start, impact funds today? Because everyone realizes that sustainability agenda is really at the core theme of what they should be doing. And people who are not thinking through it, they better wake up today.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, Srini. I think the closest I see this to my home is when we get any food delivery or we get a cup of coffee that comes to my house. Sometimes when I order a cup of coffee from, say, a Starbucks, and if you see the amount of material that comes along with that for just one cup of coffee, you're a little bit surprised sometimes. But thankfully today, a lot of that is biodegradable and sustainable. And there's so much of paraphernalia. Do you want a fork? Do you want plastic? So at least there is a greater awareness among some of the companies which are in the consumption phase. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about the fact that if you're not in that sustainability zone, you will not be able to raise funding. Let's quickly move on from sustainability to sort of taking the next step from sort of saying that sustainability is a great way of sort of engaging with the other stakeholders in your ecosystem, whether you're looking at employees, whether you're looking at the planet, whether you're looking at other kind of stakeholders who hitherto were never considered other than the ones which created profit, is one way of looking at it. But if I take this to the next level, we would really want to say that how do we move from sustainability to solving social problems? How do we create distinct social impact? And maybe I want to start here, Srini, with what you just spoke about, which is really the whole area of impact investing and and that whole space. And maybe I'd like to just get your thoughts, Srini, on how do you really see this combination of entrepreneurship, innovation, technology kind of coming together in this whole impact space? And what are your general broad views on the impact investing space in India? There are some concerns that a lot of these people have to compete with traditional bulge bracket funds today, like you spoke about, and therefore, how do you really kind of see that sort of amalgam of sustainability moving towards social impact? And what's the role of entrepreneurship and innovation and technology? Some thoughts about the overall impact investing sort of arena in India.
Deepali, would you like to go? Let's talk about this.
Go ahead, Srini. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think there are two aspects to impact investing. One is the entrepreneurship. The other one is to make sure that you get a stream of investors. To find a common theme between entrepreneurship who are aspirational, want to change the world, and you put the entrepreneurship and investors in one room, sometimes it's very hard to come up with a very common theme, really, because entrepreneurship is all about solving problems and creating scale. Investors is when do I, what is my time's money back, and will I get an exit at all, really? So the conundrum in this is what is very critical that impact investors, like many of the impact investors in the country and plus institutions like us, have to solve. Because most of the funds which we invest in are all our extended arms of how we try and create impact in societies, really. So at the heart of everything is really about making sure that we are able to create entrepreneurship who are solving some of the most important issues. Take, for example, food and agriculture. It has had such a low percentage of private equity investors in the country. If you look at the overall private equity inflow into the country over the last 10 years and what percentages come into food and agri, it's less than 10%. It obviously shows it's a very difficult sector to create commercial investments. And that's probably the role of DFIs and impact investors to make sure you're able to go that extra mile. So in substance, what is needed here is three things. One is making sure that you're able to provide patient capital. Patience is very important in impact investing. You can, you can make 10 times money or 20 times money, provided you're patient. And I think most of the mainstream investors are really constrained because of fund life constraints. And really the DFIs can play a role in terms of in terms of their ability to create it. Second thing is, I think using the funds architecture on the impact investing and going through a scale-up co-investment program with them in terms of creating the mainstream entrepreneurs. And that's how most of this the entities today have been created, and that's very critical. And the third one is, of course, tech and impact investing are very intertwined today. We invest in VC funds, not because all of them are impact. It's because there's a lot of overlap between tech and impact investing today. And that's the only way we can, honestly, if you go through a conventional model of brick and mortar, your cost income ratio will jack up. You'll never be able to make the services affordable. Take, for example, healthcare today. I mean, in a sense, if you try and see what percentage of the population could really afford private healthcare in this country during the COVID times, it is an abysmal figure, really. So I think it is very important we use technology, and impact investing are very intertwined with each other. And I think that has really come to the mainstream. Yeah.
Got it. No, I think some great points there, Srini, in terms of how should we look at impact investing and technology. Maybe Deepali, I had a slightly sort of parallel question for you, which is really how can the efforts of philanthropy and tech-driven social impact, because what Srini has really spoken about is really the fact that how is it from the for-profit side of things, these things come together. How do you see this sort of coming at it from purely a for-profit grant kind of, if I may say, a not-for-profit grant model? How can we kind of move it a little bit towards entrepreneurship and kind of innovatively work towards creating a slightly more market-based solution? I think, for example, your whole project with Tata Power is really a very unique example of how you actually used a systems approach to creating sustainability, livelihoods, jobs, income, and things like that. And it is still, even if I may say, at the core, it's still a not-for-profit model. It may necessarily not be a purely for-profit model. So some thoughts around that, Deepali, from your side?
Yeah, I think just first to react, I think we're not seeing it as a non-profit model. We're really looking at how do we make it an effective business model so that it can attract commercial capital. That is going to be an important litmus test for us, because when you're really looking at the energy access issues, you want the private sector to be coming in and playing an important role. Yes, right now there is a need for blended finance. There is a need for a lot of support around seeing how new enterprises could be developed so that the revenue streams of the private sector can be improved. So, we are doing all that we can to really make sure that that really reaches a point where it can attract the right capital that it needs for it to be sustainable and scalable. So I really see the role of philanthropy essential to really bring together the right constellation of actors who see the same how and come together to reimagine new pathways to unlock the power of that how in ways that would accelerate the fruition of a sustainability agenda. So, when you look at the role of philanthropic institutions in the development of this ecosystem, we can really go beyond this. In addition to creating impact through our grants, we can also inspire, educate, and catalyze private finance to enter this sector through various ways. So you were talking about technology. So in the business model that we have, where we're really trying to expand the mini-grid sector, there was a need to really attract commercial capital. So we did provide blended finance, whether it was setting up a mini grid in a box or looking at smart metering, etc. Now, again, very important components to really look at the overall business model to be really effective. And that's where, we have the flexibility as a philanthropy to really see where we could put in our resources as grants or into the blended financing instruments, or look at first loss guarantees, etc. I think the way we describe our capital is high risk capital, and we do have the ability to move it in different segments as needed. So, innovations in the field have been inherently tricky compared to software startups, and there's always been a lack of capital backing them. We need more early stage financing options to really help entrepreneurs build products and solutions that can really help them scale the global sustainability agendas. So building up on our work, we are creating now a global energy alliance for people and planet, which we are going to launch at COP26 next month. This will really be a platform to provide and facilitate sustainable energy solutions worldwide. One of our core focus areas as part of this will be to really advance early stage innovations. We've been seeing that a lot of work has been happening in silos, but really how do we get all this work together so that, the entire ecosystem can be benefiting from it, and as well as supporting wherever there's need, because at this point of time, a lot of these innovations are early stage. So what we are going to be doing is really supporting this ecosystem and really getting incubators, accelerators, pilot field deployment of funds, investing in systems level impact by growing the energy ecosystem, while challenging our own dependence on fossil fuel is really a pathway towards a long-term energy transition. So, what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is also ways and means of how we're kind of thinking through this. And of course, there's a lot of learning as we're going along the journey. So we're really hoping that with this aggregated platform that we're creating, we can really make sure that, we can get to our overall vision of really serving 1 billion people with reliable energy and reducing fossil, carbon emissions by 1 billion tons, or becomes a reality in the next decade.
Fantastic, Deepali. I think that was a great kind of segue into the next section, where I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail on 2 or 3 areas which I think are close to the hearts of both of you people. I think the first one is around the whole area of climate. And I know that, that as we are all aware, is a very integral part of the way we think about sustainability. I know Srini, CDC has very recently announced a large $1 billion investment into climate space in India. I know, Deepali, from your side, along with IKEA, that is also something that, you people have also made a large commitment together about $1 billion. I'd like to just start maybe with you, Srini. Give us some flavor in terms of what are the areas where you will be looking at. What kind of strategies are you looking at? Is this going to go into large scale infra? Are you also looking at early stage startup funds? What's the flavor of how this funding is going to get used?
Thank you. I think, as I said earlier, we have signed up to the Paris Accord, which has 3 components to this. Net zero by 2050. That is investing in a net zero world, because investments decisions that you take today determine your emissions tomorrow. The just transition agenda, which is transitioning to a net zero economy by creation of decent jobs and skill development at the forefront of the change. Because if you try and look at, we'll at least displace 1 to 2 million people if you try and move from coal-based economy to a renewable economy. And what do you do with such people unless you are able to reskill them? This is a very big agenda, and the cost factor is astronomically high. And this is something we are in discussions with the government as well. Adaptation and resilience is about strengthening adaptation and resilience of sectors, communities, and businesses and people to the effect of climate change, really. So those are the 3 areas. We have a no coal policy. On gas, we are extremely selective, particularly in the FCAS countries and fragile countries, that's what we call. Maybe we'll do something in very fragile nations, really. Now, so that is entirely the thesis of climate. So the whole climate thesis, we have to look at it through the lens of renewable. Of course, on utility scale, we have IANA, which we created in 2018, which has got around 2.7 gigawatt today, and we mobilized around $500 million. We started this literally from a PowerPoint as our control deal, and we are one of the few DFIs who can do control in this country. Yeah. But the most striking part of IANA is that we have created, along with FCDO and CDC and few others, we have created a skill development center for unemployed youth in Anantapuram in Andhra Pradesh, and now we are doing this in Bikaner with a specific focus on women for Solar Skill Training Center, where we trained around 185 people, out of which 85 are women, and we are creating such centers in Bikaner and few other states in north of India. So that's the second point. And the third point is in terms of the way we look at climate is on three areas. One is the whole utility scale, and we continue to invest there, which is very important for the country. And India is doing an amazing job in terms of the bidding process, etc. Next one is the CNI. CNI is, of course, a very underexplored area in the country, which is only 15 megawatts, but we still have a long way to go. The third area is about the distributed generation. I mean, any kind of microgrid solution that Deepali spoke about could be a big area for us. Smart metering could be a big area. I think the most important area is we have to wear the sector, the climate lens through every sector. We try and we also do directed lending to institutions specifically targeted on climate. I mean, everything should be measurable, yeah?
Right.
If you look at construction and real estate, we have to have climate resilient buildings. Right. So 30% of our new investments from 2021 will be in climate related assets, besides the $1 billion commitment to India.
Got it. No, that's really encouraging to hear, Srini, that you're not merely looking at this as a sector, dedicated investment, but kind of trying to embed a climate lens into pretty much everything that you guys are doing, which I think is fantastic. And I was also watching one of your conferences recently on the whole climate transition agenda. And I think that's something that also I think you guys are taking up quite seriously. Deepali, any thoughts from you on this whole space of climate? We have about 4-5 minutes left. So maybe, I'll just get your thoughts on climate and then go on to a couple of other issues like gender and catalytic finance.
No, as Srini said, and what I kind of just mentioned earlier, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, is really the platform where we really are going to be making sure that we are addressing both the needs of marginalized communities where they can have energy access again, which is reliable and of quality and affordable, so that can really drive economic development. Because at the end of the day, we really feel in all the work that we're trying to do, what's the kind of impact that we're creating on communities that are really underserved. And within the work that we're trying to do through the distributed renewable energy space, how is climate front and center? Also, we've been looking at, and Srini, it'll be good to catch up after the meeting, around CNI and the work that we've been doing around mini grids, because obviously we need a lot more financing in this space. Also, as I mentioned, this platform that we're going to be launching, our aspiration is really to get to $20 billion over the next decade. We are going to be close to actually getting about $10 billion for this platform at COP26. So we are seeing a lot of excitement from multilaterals, bilaterals, philanthropic resources, and most importantly, governments themselves, where this work has to happen. Because again, I think, they have so much at stake, and, you really want their commitment, and, there's a lot of things that can happen. And I think financial resourcing is not always the issue, but I think we just need a lot more enabling policies also to make sure that, the financing instruments that we need to get the resources in countries is possible. So I think, Ramraj, I'll just stop over there, but I'm really excited to see what all of us can do together, because the IPCC report has really exposed there's a red alert right now. We've seen what's happened with COVID. So if you're not going to, it's a wake-up call. We all need to come together. And as Srini was saying, in everything that we're trying to do, keep climate front and center.
Surely. I think last question for both of you is around the whole area of gender. We know that this is, again, another lens that we want to increasingly look at investments, whether we look at it at a sustainability level, whether we want to look at it at an impact level. And I know for a fact that Srini, as well as Deepali, both of your organizations are actively engaged. Srini and CDC, you are already part of the 2X challenge. And I know you've started, sort of supporting some funds which are very actively looking at this space. Deepali, I'm sure, Rockefeller also will have, a very distinct agenda around gender. So some quick, sort of last thoughts from you before I take on a couple of questions from the audience on this, but maybe just some thoughts from you, Srini and Deepali, on the whole issue of gender and how are you guys looking at it?
I should hand this over to Deepali. This is a very important topic.
I think, and Ramraj, I want to give you also, thanks, Srini. I want to give you, Ramraj, a moment as well, because I think your own organization's been doing some phenomenal work. So it'll be good for the audience to hear about that. But absolutely right. I mean, gender is front and center, and all that we're trying to do, it's trying to make sure that, you're not thinking of gender as an afterthought, but how are they front and center in terms of just how you're planning and conceiving the different pieces of work that you're doing and how you're giving them a voice and representation. I mean, recently we've also launched along with Co-Impact, which is an entity that we created, a gender fund. The aspiration is for $500 million. I think I've also made that announcement on LinkedIn and Twitter. So I really wanted, the closing date for applications is 30th October. So great shout out to all the entrepreneurs to go look at it, because I do think, if you really want to do some innovative work around gender, you do have the resources to do that. So I think my only, as an organization, there's this full commitment, and we're really looking at ways and means where we don't have to duplicate efforts. I think a lot has been going on in the gender space, but somehow the needle is not moving. So I think all of us really need to be reflecting a lot more as to what we've done and what hasn't worked, as opposed to just kind of doing more and more pilots. But Ramraj, back to you to share your organization's phenomenal work in this space.
Thank you. Maybe I'll take a minute, Srini, to just speak a bit about something that we've been working on. We are trying to build a gender lens index for the impact portfolios in India, and the gender lens index essentially is trying to give a quantitative score at an impact enterprise level in terms of their inclusion or gender inclusion at 3 or 4 dimensions. So one is the employment dimension, second is the leadership dimension, and the third is the ownership dimension. So you really look at an organization in terms of its capacity to be diverse in terms of the people they employ, the leaders they have, and the ownership they have. The fourth dimension is around, specific customer products or specific areas where they're trying to design products, from a gender lens. And the whole idea is to be able to take this bottom up from one enterprise up to an impact asset manager to an impact LP. So the whole idea will be that we should be able to do scoring right from something which is at an enterprise level and move it all the way up to the LP level. The whole idea of the agenda, Srini and Deepali, is to bring a slightly more quantitative orientation to this, so that when let's say, either Deepali or Srini or anybody else is looking at a technical assistance program, there is a little bit more quantitative orientation around, is this a sector problem? Is this an asset manager problem? Is this a problem in terms of supply of, inadequate supply of companies from accelerators, incubators? Is this a regional problem? Some of these questions today, we don't have too many good answers. I don't think we even have data in terms of, are we advancing on the gender issue on an year-on-year basis? So do we know, are we better this year than last year? We don't have an answer. At least I don't have an answer to this question in terms of the portfolio of the members. So what we thought is, we should really create some kind of an index which can keep getting scored on an year-on-year basis, so that we know where we better next year. I mean, where are we better today than compared to last year? How is each sector doing? And the sector score is obviously a accumulation of all the scores in that underlying sector, all the enterprises. That's the nature of the work that we've been working on. And really, we've had active engagement with Jen and the team at CDC also on this particular thing. That's something that I'm working on. I think we're completely out of time. I just have one question, Srini, which I think you should take, which I think will be a very useful question. And the question comes from Smita Mishra, which is really, what should startups and MSMEs focus on with respect to sustainable development? And at what stage should they start thinking about environmental and social impact? I thought this was a great question. And I thought I'll give you a half a minute to, give us your thoughts on this. And maybe Deepali, if you have any thoughts on this, and then we can close.
Well, Ramraj, I have to say 1 or 2 words about gender. It's very dear to our heart. We are also looking at gender smart investing, which is an important component of climate investing.
Got it.
Right? And secondly, I think we have a gender toolkit in our website, which is very valuable for anyone who wants to access it. And third one is, I think we are looking at gender because we have signed up to the 2X challenge. Looking at it through the leadership, through workers, through entrepreneurs, through various facets of it. It's very important for us. Right. So to answer your question, I think profit with purpose. I mean, when Lord Reef in 1962, one of our oldest chairmen, said that doing good without losing money is what CDC is meant for. I still stand by that. I've spent 24 years in CDC. Right. I still stand by that, really. Profit with purpose is very important. I think very critical of three areas for entrepreneurship. Think about it. One is about upskilling people to ensure retention, which is also a part of sustainability in my view. You got to upskill people. If you want to start an academy, start doing that. Think about developing impact in a way. Development impact, if you think about sustainability, it improves the stickiness with your client. And then it becomes your second nature. You think about it that way, that how do I improve my stickiness with my suppliers and in both on the supply and the demand side. It's a development impact theme. It's a sustainable theme. And I think that's how you have to think about it. And third important thing is, while valuations are enormously important, unless you think about sustainability from the day one, you're never going to do this. You get carried away. Yeah, those are the three things.
Got it. Great. No, I think that is, I think very, very useful. And I think, Srini, the 2X challenge is a great way. And I can tell you, a little bit closer to the ground in a way, if I may say, looking at it, I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the impact asset managers and others, are truly motivated by this whole 2X challenge and kind of see it as something which can kind of bring together a lot of the thoughts they have in terms of how they can integrate gender into their investing decisions. So I think I just really wanted to, place on record, some of the great feedback that we've been getting from a lot of the asset managers. Deepali, any last thoughts on this question that I raised? Otherwise, we will just close with a quick word of thanks.
No, I think both of you put it really well. I think you have to be thinking around impact and sustainability up front and center, right from day one, rather than think of it, okay, I'll come back to it once I'm at a particular stage. That's not going to happen.
Right. So thank you. That's, I think, Deepali. Thank you, Deepali and Srini. I think this was a wonderful conversation. We really appreciate the time. I think, we have a very large audience. From what I heard last from Suresh at TAI, we had upwards of about 25,000 people who had registered, including about 15,000 entrepreneurs. I'm sure this conversation is going to be hugely valuable for all of them in terms of how they think about sustainability pretty early, rather than thinking about sustainability when they've become large legacy organizations, when kind of moving the needle itself becomes a huge challenge. I must, on behalf of TAI and on behalf of the IIC, really thank you, Srini, as well as Deepali, for the time you've taken, for your perspectives, for answering all our questions, and really sharing with the audience how some of these are becoming very central themes in terms of how one looks at investment, whether one looks at gender, whether one looks at climate, whether one looks at the broader, brush of sustainability. With that, let me conclude this session and hand it back to the organizers at TAI. Thank you very much again, Srini and Deepali.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You.